Well, I recognize a lot of the faces here. It's a pleasure to be here, and we're going to try something that I've never tried before, and we're going to both be presenting this this presentation to you guys. I did get a call from Eliza, and I went back today, and it was February the 7th. And she said, Johnny, can you come over and meet with Judy, Ann, and I? We have something we want to talk to you about. And I thought, oh my God, what is in store? And I really had no idea. And I'm not sure they really did either. But when we first met on February 14th, which is really 2 months ago, Eliza started out with, I want to see some color on the university. I've been walking across the campus for years at football games, and it's just not what it could be. I didn't go to UT, unfortunately. I went to LSU, and we have a beautiful campus, but it too, over the years, has lost its original design intent. Buildings have been plopped where during Huey Long's day, there were these great vistas and alleys of trees. So I think it's a problem that almost every major university in America today has had to face. Enrollment has gone up since the 60s, and that's like 50 years ago. So I started thinking about what Eliza was trying to express to me, and I realized that this was going to be a learning opportunity for me as well as for Eliza and for her committee, because there was no real program, there was no real budget, there was no real site, there was no real anything. It was just, I want color on the campus. And we came up one weekend, Stuart, Eliza, and I, and I want to say to you all, because I really, really believe this, I've practiced landscape architecture for 43 years now. It shocks me to even say that, but this is an amazing opportunity that you guys are starting. I don't think you realize what impact you can have in making this campus really a very, very beautiful place for future generations to come to enjoy, to go to school at, to remember, to reflect on when they leave. I read the landscape master plan that was put together, and it really had a lot of interesting information that helped me when Jonathan and I were working, trying to formulate what we thought an appropriate way to begin to express color on the campus and how we might better organize the landscape plans and the landscaping that exists. And what I realized was, it's been 110 years, 1909, the Kansas City landscape architecture firm of Hare and Hare, who did Herman Park in Houston and universities all across the South and Midwest, they were hired to develop a master plan for 40 acres. That was the original size of the campus. And the campus was, at that time, the boundaries were Guadalupe, Speedway, 21st Street, and 24th Street. So that means a whole lot more to you than it does to me, but you get some idea that, 110 years ago, you had a very good planning group working with good architects to give you good bones that this campus could grow from. What happened was that it grew so much that today 96% of the campus is a combination, or as they say, a mosaic of streets, scenic areas, connective spaces, courtyards, parklands, natural areas, some well-designed, some not. And that's a quote from the landscape master plan. And if you walk across campus and critique it, not really criticizing it, but just critique what you have, you realize that it is exactly that. It is a mosaic. So I hope y'all begin to think of what this group is charging themselves with. It's a whole lot more than seasonal color. It may have started out as a seasonal color wish, but there really is absolutely no reason that the University of Texas should not have one of the most beautiful campuses in the country. You have the space. There is money available somewhere, I'm told. And it's just a matter of making it an important priority. I've done this enough to realize that it is amazing what one squeaky wheel can do. And you get a group full of women squeaking around the state. I think y'all can do anything you want to. And I hope you squeak loudly. So with that, the only way I knew how to approach this for Eliza, and really it's been Eliza, I think she roped Judy and Ann in there just for moral support, but she needed budgets, she needed programs, she needed a sense of scope, a sense of where do I go with this idea? So we took it on as sort of an imaginary project. We didn't limit ourselves by budget because we didn't have to. But we did limit ourselves to what we knew was practical at a university level. We in Houston do design, we build, we maintain. So we're very, very familiar with the challenges we procure of what, if you were to pursue a direction like we're outlining for you, what that is going to involve. There was another interesting note in the master plan, and they said, it says, a challenging reality to the design and maintenance of the campus landscape is not a fixed artifact. It evolves dynamically, affected by its natural growth process, climate changes both seasonally and event-related, disease. Campus landscape is a continuous process, not a fixed event. So the minute you plant those 10,000 tulips, you may have a heat wave, or the bulbs may not come up, and so the heads are this high. You got to be prepared for that, but that's just one little, really insignificant hold up in the big picture, because what you're really striving for is a consistent effort, year after year, generation after generation, all committed to the same purpose, and y'all are the founding group of that. So I think you should give yourselves a big hand, because it's incredible that y'all would have the vision and be willing to do it. And it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be inexpensive, but it's going to be very, very, very important. especially the statistics that I read, you know, with only 3%, let me see, of the original hair and hair design, that only represents 3% of the campus, total campus today. So it just makes it that much more important to make sure that the landscapings that go into different buildings, different areas, they need to be the best they can be and not afterthoughts. And you should take a great amount of effort and pride in trying to take care of the historic core of the campus, which is, of course, the trees, the University Boulevard, the Littlefield Fountain, because while some of it may not be working quite properly, it really does have a significant meaning to this overall history of University of Texas. And it just takes a few people to really get behind it and push, and you're going to end up with something not just mediocre, but something very great. So with that said, let us show you what we were thinking about as we looked at the campus and this University Avenue. I'm going to stand back here so I can see. The first thing that they say in the master landscape plans for the university is that, you know, it needs to be civic in nature, a bold expression of the community. It needs to be simple. By simple, I think they're referring to not real complicated with lots of plants and lots of busyness. So with that said, we drove down University, and while the boxwood hedges appear to be in decent shape, you can't see anything. You can't even see what's inside of the boxwood hedges. But it did give us a perspective of what it might be if, you know, our first idea was, well, maybe we'll cut them down, we'll lower them, but you're going to wait 3 years while they, you know, revegetate. So we said, let's clear the palette and let's see what we can do. The dip in the road really can be used to your advantage because it gives you sort of two high points. Going toward the tower, the road rises, and coming back toward Martin Luther King Boulevard behind this sitting area, it rises up. So that gave us the idea of maybe using rolled steel, which you're starting to see in more and more applications around the country. It's a relatively cost-effective way to achieve elevation change or to accentuate changes in levels. So what we were proposing was it's a rather formal, and by formal I mean organized more than intricate. But we said 85% of that central four esplanades.
No, and then two stars.
And two circles. 85% of that is just lawn. Well, lawn isn't that expensive to put in, and it's not really that expensive to maintain. But if we could make the lawn special lawn, you know, so it wasn't just the same lawn that you see all across the campus. How do you make lawn special? You raise it. You do lawn steps at different ends. So we're taking the 85% of that space and we're using grass, but we're doing it in a real clean, organized, clipped, maintained way. And we're saying the elevated grass could be a zoysia like you see in putting greens or or Tiff Bermuda. That might be a grass that you overseed each winter with rye. So from September to May, it's that beautiful bright green. There was a woman I worked with at River Oaks Garden Club, and she said, you know, Johnny, green is a color too, because everybody was wanting color, color, color. Well, what's more beautiful than a bright emerald green lawn in the wintertime? So we were thinking in terms of how do you know, if we got to be realistic about what you're going to be able to maintain. We want it to be a bold statement. Let's take 85% of that space and make the grass so beautiful that people want to stop and walk on it, you know? So the elevated areas are proposed to be zoysia. And let me say right now, we need to do more research if you decide to pursue this. There may be a Tiff Bermuda that's better suited for Austin than zoysia, but right now we're talking concept. What is it grade now? And that would be at the street curb. Let's go to the next. Yeah, so this might be one turf, and then this might be what is common around the university, like a Bermuda or whatever, but well-maintained, edged, fertilized, irrigated. That's the first, that's the last esplanade that you're seeing here. On each end, you'd have the University of Texas logo. It would be elevated and angled so that you could really read the color, and it's a perfect place to plant color, and it's the perfect way to maintain color, because if you dribble color all across the campus, it's not going to have the same impact if you take it and plant it in a bold way, en masse. It's also easier to maintain. You don't have the animals digging in it. By elevating the beds, using the rolled steel, it's easier to plant. There are lots of advantages, so we're trying to build a system that lends itself to long-term, easier maintenance. I'm not going to lie to you guys and say, oh, it's going to be no maintenance involved. It's going to be a lot of maintenance, and it depends upon how many times you as a group decide you want to change this color out. For example, we were trying to figure a schedule, and Eliza wanted it to always be beautiful, so we were going on her orders. She started all of this, and we realized, you know, there may be a year where you plant winter color in January, and there may be another year where you plant winter color in November. So you're going to have to be flexible, and there's going to have to be a group that understands that your selection of the color each season is a function of the weather of that time. Not rocket science, but it can certainly be done in a way that you might be able to extend a color planting for 4 months instead of 2 months. There may be special reasons why you want an event that is happening at the university where you take out perfectly good color and put something that is more meaningful or special. That's the exciting part and the dynamic part of taking that main esplanade or the main street and on each end matching logos. We're proposing to rebuild the stars so they're much more three-dimensional. And I'm giving Jonathan hell trying to keep up with.
It's okay, we'll switch back and forth.
But you can see these are the lawn steps that we were saying. They're land forms. You could, at certain times, you could display sculpture on each one of the street, between each of the streets, for holidays, for whatever. The color beds were really kept small and tight, and each color bed is planted behind a dwarf yaupon border. The boxwood is there and is doing remarkably well, but we've just found over the last 15 years there's been so much trouble with boxwood in gardens across the country with fungal problems that maybe to start this installation you would use the native Texas yaupon, both the dwarf yaupon, and we were planning on using just the Ilex vomitoria, which is the tree yaupon, at the two center esplanades where we have to try to hide that big metal
Access port.
Panel. But we're also using the crushed gravel in areas so that people can step into these bed areas that need to be deadheaded or pruned or pinched back. And we're trying to design it and anticipate what's involved in the maintenance. We're thinking, and you can address that, we're how many hours a week for maintaining these 4 blocks?
I have the exact number sitting over there, but I'll grab it here in just a little bit. But really what we're thinking is it's 2 days worth of labor each week.
And
for
now
a
we're
crew
talking
to be able to go through and clean everything, mow, and deadhead.
fertilize, but we're talking as good as you can do it. You know, there may be times when we have to be happy with doing it 1 day a week, but we didn't limit ourselves to trying to save 20,000 here or 10,000 there. We just said, if we were starting this project and there was no limitations to it, how should we do it to get the best possible result? And that's how we developed our maintenance schedules. This area, which parallels the other esplanade where we had that cover, we decided, well, we gravel over it, maybe not gravel over the other one, but you could put flagpoles and people could come in and take photographs toward the tower. Right now, I'm told that a big photograph taking place is at MLK in that raised area. So this just brings you a little bit closer.
And it does take out the big AT&T building on the left. If you pay attention into all of those selfies that people take, a lot of it is taken up by that building there on the side. And so this brings it just a little bit further down to get a little bit more interest with the landscape on the actual avenue, grab a little bit more of that fountain, and then of course have the tower in the background.
And when we met at Eliza's with the first larger group of ladies, I mean, if you look at that, really, it isn't really even dependent upon color. I mean, we have a lot of color in this current layout, but you could maybe consider doing something where the white flowers are that was more permanent rather than that maybe bloom 2 times or 3 times a year. We did not go even anywhere near wildflowers and that, because while that could be a whole nother design concept that we could make work there beautifully, I don't think that was Eliza's vision, and I think she's earned the right to set this off as what her vision is. So that's why we have a lot more structure and color. Stewart's addition was he wanted the Bevo.
He did.
And they wanted it right under UT, but it just seemed to fit better at these 2 locations, which is down in the flat area of the streets.
And they get to mirror each other and look at each other, and the span on that is 20 feet. So it's a large piece that gets to sit there that is very visible.
So it's really, I would like to think of it as being elegantly simple. You know, it's there are no whistles and there are no fans. It's just bold, and I think it's exactly what the image of this university could be if you elected to pursue that. Jonathan, why don't you just run through some of the pictures, and then we can come back. If anybody has a question, please ask us. By the way, there's already a precedent for using this rolled steel on campus. I've seen it in but for some of you that are curious, this is what the material is, the thickness. It has the life expectancy of this material is about 40 to 50 years in the landscape, where Core 10 steel adds maybe only 5 more years and doubles the cost. So when it's installed, we typically waterproof the back of it and even extend the life expectancy. But there's something even with the coloration of the steel that sort of fits the UT campus in my mind. I mean, I'd rather see the rolled steel than, even if we said it could be all limestone walls. I think this just has a nice character to it. And to give you an idea, these are sort of on a much, this is how you, like at each end, I think we're 48 inches out of the ground, but you're going to be reading it at an angle, so that sort of accentuates the way the flowers read. All of this is cut with lasers, brought in, welded on site. It's a complicated installation, but it's a simple installation. It's something that could make a big, bold statement, but it isn't rocket science to get it installed. Did we pass out those? You can see there are all sorts of, like the hardest thing we had to figure out was when does a season start in Austin? Is summer end in September, or does fall begin in October? So I'm going to let y'all vote on that and tell us. But there are some plants that are going to be particularly well suited. That copper colored pansy is the UT color, and it would last and should have no problem surviving Austin's cold days and cool nights, and carry you from probably November all the way to March. What's going to happen is, as this project gets off the ground, you're going to have to contract grow your color. We're going to have to make some arrangements with some of these color growers so that you're not dependent upon them. You're not going to go to them in August and say, oh, we need stuff, and they say, well, we only have 400 and you need 4,000. So that's part of this maintenance that would be figured out as you move forward with it. If you want bulbs, we put in a holiday time, and that holiday is sort of dependent upon whenever you want to call it holiday. But it could be bulbs that are going to be much shorter lived, 2 weeks maybe on tulips, paper whites, but there may be a year when for some reason, you do it. Jonathan is going to go over the maintenance and the numbers because he was the man who put them all together, and he understands it or knows it better than I do. But if you have any questions, you can ask now or ask us at the end of that.
Did you not tell me that when you build these iron, are they iron?
Mm-hmm.
They
Steel.
Steel, 60 years?
We're saying 40 to 50
40
years.
to 50 years. That sounds good to me. If we make an investment and we don't have to go back. I mean, I like that. So
Yeah, I mean, it's this room's life expectancy. Now, some of y'all may live 1,000 years, but you know, by 50 years, we're not going to care.
Well, I'll take over then before you. I'm going to go through these pictures and touch on just a few items and hopefully not repeat too much of anything that Johnny had already mentioned. Talking about really the sense of arrival that University Avenue does have coming into campus. And the way, looking at the lines of the avenue, we really tried to play those up. We didn't try to look at this as a novel idea. These are things that are already seen on campus, these lines and view sheds that were already there we're keeping. We're not blocking views, planting trees right down the middle or anything like that. Looking at the UT logo, it is raised in the back about 3.5 feet, and it drops down to about 1 foot in the front. That lifts it at an angle that does make it viewable from both ends. So if you're standing at the MLK Boulevard and taking your picture, you'll see the UT logo in the background. If you're on the other end at the fountain, or if you're in the tower looking down, you will also get to look at the UT logo on the other side, which really does give that great aerial shot too before games and things like that.
And the U and the T may be different colors. You know, right now it sort of blurs as one color, but combining colors is a whole nother design opportunity.
This just gives an indication of where that slope sits, how it works as far as the UT, that's kind of the larger mass there on top. And then you see that lower level of rolled steel, it's 18 inches, and that's what's lifting that lawn up and kind of taking that green that is also a color and elevating it. This is just a plan there, rolled steel. These are the lawn forms that kind of give access for the maintenance. They're not necessarily meant to be steps. They're 9 inches each. They're just part of the landform and giving a little bit more of a feeling of inviting as you go onto these forms. The stars are a 3D form right now. If you look at them, they kind of look like a flat starfish. These are lifted up in a way that creates much more interest in a 3D feel to them. The photo location, bringing it forward it doesn't remove the other location, it just adds another place that people can meet and get kind of a little closer view. This is the existing structure and sign that's there at MLK Boulevard. That is where the people, go take their selfies. The UT logo there, we're looking at the back side of it. It's kept at a height so when people are taking pictures, we're not looking at the back of a steel wall. It's kept low enough that people stand here, and that's really where that kind of belly in this road helps. As it goes down, we're utilizing that.
It's actually the same height as the limestone seat wall with the bench. It's just exaggerated in that perspective.
We did put in there, looking at pictures and walking the site, that the access to that existing area for pictures is a little bit rough. There's kind of some gravel walkways instead of it being a paved surface. This plan does call for at least paving that so it's easier to access. Looking at how this is going to be brought together, there's opportunity for endowment plaques that can be placed if a family or a group says this is our esplanade. There's opportunity for that then ties into the design by using that same steel. And they can be placed where they're done yearly. Someone does a year's worth of color change outs and they can be removed, or it can be more of a permanent situation. Looking at color change out, this is where we really had fun looking at what is a season as far as Austin is concerned. And these are our starting points. These aren't necessarily set in stone. We're going to be having good discussions of what else grows here and what else will work well in these places. So winter, we're saying, is January through mid-March. You can see there it's a great mix of orange and white, and you're going to see that throughout all these colors. We tried to find, of course, orange first, starting there and trying to keep it as close to the burnt orange side and less of that other orange school that we don't want to call attention to. So as we go from there, from winter into spring, mid-March through May, we can continue to get a good deal of floral coverage within those same colors. Summer, this is where we start to get in, where we're saying we want something that maybe we extend into beginning of the games, or whether or not this is something that goes through the summer, and then we as game seasons begin, we change out to new color. There's a couple of options in here that we get to throw in there as far as the hibiscus and the ixora that maybe are a little bit more kind of a tropical flower, but it's great for summer. Fall, October through November, definitely getting into more everyone coming back to campus. There's opportunities for using more foliage at this time as well, where we can see number 1, the coleus, and number 4, the croton, that can bring us that orange, but not necessarily have to be a flower. I'm going to jump back to that. This is also the holiday where we talked about you can bring in tulips as far as planting those so that they come up at a certain time. We can somewhat time, as Johnny mentioned, there's only certain things you can do. Sometimes a storm does roll through or weather does change, but we can time normally the planting of the tulips in a way we can get them to pop up at the time we want them to. They normally come to us refrigerated, so when we put them in the ground, they start to go. When we start looking at the overall kind of investment, we put together projected costs. These aren't necessarily set in stone. This is us saying this is what we think it will take to do it with known practices and contractors. Just under $1 million, it breaks it down per the 6 esplanades. And that's so that we can look at it as each one as an individual project, or we can look at it as a total project together. They can be built that way. Going into the maintenance, really, we looked at color changeouts being something that we're contracted as far as the growing. These aren't little flowers that come in and then we end up waiting a little bit for them to grow. These are coming in at 6-inch or gallon size. So these are going to be basketball size plants that are going to be planted.
Volleyball.
Well, 4 to 5 times a year is what we've projected. Each time is about $50,000, and that's to come in and completely change out the entire avenue. That's for all of the esplanades. There is opportunity, as Johnny said, that some things can be stretched. Some things we can hold a little bit longer in place. We might see that the coleus is doing really well in the fall, and so we hold it a little bit longer. There's opportunity to say that we're going to change out the UT logos, but we're going to leave the longer runs of flowers as they are for now. But that is if we come in and do a complete change out all at once. And then maintenance, we're looking at the idea that this needs to be maintained in a way that we're proud of what it is. We can look at great pictures and great design, but it can really start to fall apart if we're not maintaining it correctly. And that's where we're really going to start looking at partners and how it works here at UT with maintenance. That is projected for someone to be coming in and mowing and taking care of all the flowers, that's deadheading, the fertilizing, the changing things out as needed for 2 days a week. And that's a monthly cost there that's given. At this time, if there's questions, I'm sure Johnny and I will have some answers.
Clarification on the cost. So,
Yes.
Those are the construction costs?
Those are day one costs to install. So that would include the first round of flower color, and that would include a little bit in there as far as kind of a handoff period from the construction into maintenance.
Not necessarily the necessary project costs that would go along with that.
And can you define project costs?
Architect's fees?
So that would be, it was not necessarily contingencies built in there, but there is design costs built in there. This is looking at it from a standpoint of this is planting. This is landforms. We're not looking at this as a very kind of large construction project. If it does get to that point, changing because of certain elements of it, as far as maybe the UT logo and how that has to be built and the foundation that goes along with that, those things as far as engineering fees, we have a little in there. But there will be conversations as far as how the university handles these projects.
We did, I want to say we did 4.5% for professional fees of the overall budget, which I think is low, but I think it can be done for that depending on how. There are a lot of ways. We can make this a real complicated installation, or we can make it a simpler installation, but that's going to be a function that we have to understand dealing with the university.
Yeah, I'm all for simple, but I also want to be accurate.
Right.
No, and that's understandable, and that's really why we said when we looked at the numbers, and the numbers are in the packet that was handed out as well. These are based on projections of what of what it could be done for if we don't run into things that start to change the way it has to be
But
built.
we spent a lot of hours in our office with several different department heads, so they're real numbers.
Yeah. Well, clearly, given the, they're very detailed numbers.
Right.
They're not rounded off, obviously.
We spent a good deal of time trying to make sure that everything was accounted for. Things that do play into it, of course, are kind of when it's built and is how those numbers look. Steel cost is one of the biggest things in this project, and steel prices have been pretty volatile lately. And so within the past year, it's doubled in price, but not saying it's going to do that again, just saying that it could be a factor as we look forward.
And we put everything from flagpoles to lights on the flagpoles in there, so there should be no surprises, really. New irrigation, lots of drainage, which is necessary for that. I mean, I
Looking at
think
the-
all bases are covered.
They are covered. There were, of course, things that we had to assume as far as there's water given to every one of those esplanades already. And that we can access that for irrigation. There's been talk of tying into other systems and things like that. That is a much larger conversation that we'll have to look into. Yes?
One comment about the ends of those tunnels or those esplanades. We struggle greatly with damage to those.
Okay.
Via cars, trucks, deliveries. So something to consider. I know in the MLK side, there's a couple of bollards.
Correct.
If I'm not mistaken. I know bollards are ugly. But, and I'm not saying they need to be bollards, correct, I'm just saying, consider that on those edges, they can track and break down very easily.
I would estimate we have 6 to 10 incidents a year of 18-wheeler driving through these beds, trying to make a delivery, and they get on there and they get stuck, and then people rush this deep right through our flowers or whatever.
They'd have some trouble with these steel walls. It'd probably be a process to get them unstuck, actually.
But you're right. Allen Parkway was planted with red oaks that by year 15, half of them had been mowed down. River Oaks Boulevard, I don't know how many holly trees got run over, but that's sort of part of it. We can make it a little more difficult if the right insurance is in place.
But this is why we started off as a concept. This is very much so still in a concept phase. And those are the types of comments that are great to understand and know, and we're going to be digging more into as the process goes on to understand how it actually fits into actually working in the university.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. I guess to close up, our fundamental question is what y'all think about it. I kind of feel like we have an opportunity to make a change on this campus forever, to do something big, and it'll be synonymous with UT from now on when you get a picture. In my dream world, I'd like to raise the money for the project, for even the gray water to come and get gray water here so we can water it, bring it to the campus. We'll be able to water it for less amount. They would love to see us do that. Makes it more sustainable. And then I'd like to endow it while we're at it. And so it's going to be $9 million, around there, somewhere around there. When I add it up, now I know we'll get with Johnny and we'll get closer, but I don't even think that is my dream world plan for us, and that our dues, we could take our dues if we raise this money and keep doing what we're doing, little projects in the cement city. But I'd love to see us transform this school with one street that is just, looks like USC, Stanford, TCU, it just brings us up to. So I want to spend my energy all summer, fall, raising money, trying to get this, and we all got ideas, and I've got some girls in here, we've had ideas, and we're going to do it together. Anyway, I need to know, and you'll vote on it, what y'all think. Is this something you think should be our legacy? And do we all put our name on this and go for this? And then, or do you like doing just the little projects? And that's what we do. So that's a fundamental question for us to ask. There's still, like, a lot of moving parts. Johnny getting approved, the plan getting approved, the gray water, naming rights. I love the idea of either adopting a bed or somebody underwriting a section of it, and we could sell them years at a time. There's lots of ways to pay for it if we don't just do the huge endowment all at once. But those are the moving questions, the annual maintenance and the color change out, and all this will evolve. What works, how many plantings, what didn't work. So we're going to work through all that. Mike knows there are a lot of state rules about bidding, and I don't know, we'll need help to check all those boxes. But really, it's a fundamental question for us. Do we want to become this, or, so you'll vote on it. And then we'll get to the projects we're doing today. The money's in the bank. This probably will take at least a year to pull it together. So I don't think it's if or right now. I think we'll do these little projects and perk it up. And I hope we just raise it all and we keep doing what we're doing, and that gets to happen too. That's my hope. But okay.